Okay, hopefully you all can see my screen. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. Uh, Hopefully you're expecting to be at the Automate My Business, a step-by-step introduction webinar, leveraging AI and no code for business efficiency. If you're not, feel free to stick around anyways, because I think you'll find something useful here. So let's get started. Here's the agenda. Basically going to go through a quick intro, as well as we have a special offer that we'd love to give special offers. That's one of the reasons why we do this is, it's obviously a lead source for us doing these webinars, but we'd like to provide value and then provide people with great offers and start conversations from these things. So I'll be going through a special offer here at the end. Well, I'll introduce it at the beginning and then we'll talk about it at the end. I want to go through, if you were at our first webinar, so this is actually a series that we're doing on automation and AI. There is no intention in terms of how many episodes of this series we're going to have, how many webinars we're going to have. My hope is it's dozens of these and get into some very micro niche kind of stuff as we go farther and farther along with this webinar. But we did our first one a few weeks ago. I like to call it our pilot episode, kind of the dry run. So there's going to be a little bit overlap with that one and this one. So if you're in the last one, I know some of you were in the last one, um, uh, they're hoping not too much rehash on that. But if that was episode 0, we're looking at this as kind of episode 1 of this webinar, this automation webinar series. So I'm going to go through an introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about what is no code, what is AI. You're probably familiar with a lot of these concepts. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but just want to make sure everyone has a good foundation. Then we're going to talk about some of the benefits of automation. I'm going to go through the Automate My Business playbook. This is the playbook we use with our customers. We do consulting work with primarily businesses and helping them automate processes and workflows using no code as well as doing custom app development, that sort of thing. And so I'll go through that Automate My Business playbook that we use and talk about how we use it. Also want to go through, if we have time, a quick automation demo. I've already got it basically built out, so I'm probably not going to step through building it out from scratch, which is something I'd like to do at some point. But we'll go through that demo just so you can see a little bit of how we're using no code, a very simple, basic way to get started, and then have some Q&A. All right, so for the special offer preview, real quick, our plan is for anyone who attends this, we're going to offer you a couple things. One, you get a copy of the Automate My Business playbook. We'll be talking about that here in a little bit, but you'll get a copy of that, as well as a 1-hour automation consult. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but basically it's an opportunity for you to pick our brains and leverage our resources to help you build out your first automation. So we'll talk a little bit more at the tail end of this. So again, stay around till the end. It'll happen before the Q&A. We're not going to make you sit through all the Q&A. If you need to drop a little bit early when the Q&A starts, that's fine. We'll go through that offer at the end before Q&A. Okay, real quick, a little about me. I am one of the co-founders here at Caffeine Interactive. I've been doing automation for 20 years. I started in the semiconductor industry. I was helping design engineers automate their business processes. That means like different tools that they use, interoperability between those tools, massaging data as they go in and out of those tools. And so I have, pretty good perspective on doing automation and applying that within the semiconductor industry. And then when I branched out into freelance work and doing software development, a lot of what we do is business automation as a company. So even before automation, AI, no code came along, we were building apps. Love doing things like helping with, we had, example of an app is helping people in the real estate industry. We had an onboarding system for apartment rentals, being able to do background checks and get leases signed and, electronic signatures and leveraging all these tools together. Fortunately, now with no code, you can do a lot of that without having to be a developer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so real quick, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. I'm assuming everyone's coming in with a little bit of understanding of what these things are, maybe more AI than no code, but basically what no code is a platform that allows you to build applications without needing to write code. So you don't need to be a software developer. It's making custom software development available to the layman. So examples of tools that we like to use for no code, and the pretty popular tools are tools like Zapier. Another option that is Make, is kind of a competitors to Zapier, Airtable, Webflow. These are some examples of some tools we'll talk about a little bit more as we get into this. Then some of the benefits of these tools, obviously being able to deploy things a lot faster than having to write custom code, lower costs, and then, as I mentioned already, empowering non-technical users, the layman, to be able to write custom code or build custom code without having to build custom code, if that makes sense. As far as looking at, so one of the things I'd like to look at is kind of the paradigm is no code versus custom development. And so you can kind of look at, no code versus custom development. For example, on no code, you don't really require any technical skills, very little technical skills, whereas with custom development, you typically need to be either a software developer, you need to hire software developers. The deployment speed is a lot quicker on the no code side. So if you kind of read this left to right, I'm on the third bullet here under no code. It's obviously cheaper, whereas custom development is a lot more expensive. No code is scalable out of the box. Custom development can be as scalable as you want it to. Kind of think of it as custom development. The sky is the limit. You can do anything you want, but it's going to cost money, right? So you will probably get a overall better outcome by building custom development, by going the custom development route in theory, but it's going to cost so much, take so many resources. A lot of times it's not even accessible, whereas no code brings a lot of these things that would cost too much and be too difficult to automate, makes it very accessible. So that's really what we're going for with no code. And then the built-in maintenance costs. Every time we build something, we got to think about not just building it, but what is it going to cost to maintain and support that process, that workflow, whatever it is that we automated, throughout the course of its life. Going down into the cons of no code, which becomes some of the pros of custom development. There are limited features. There's only a limited, I think Zapier currently integrates with about 6,000 apps, give or take. With custom development, you can integrate with anything, right? So there's some limits, and even with apps that tools like Zapier integrate with, there are limited features, certain things you can and can't do with those apps that they integrate with, whereas you get full access to an API when you're doing custom development. But there are some ways around that, and we'll talk about some of that as well. You depend on a third party versus owning everything if you do custom development. Performance-wise, tools like Zapier, Airtable, Make, they can sometimes be less performant, whereas on the custom dev side, it can be as performant as you need it to be. Think about, things where you're needing things to happen in seconds, instant. We built a platform once for someone. Basically, they were prospecting for investment properties, and they wanted to know the very second a property hit the MLS. And so that would be difficult to do with Zapier, where there's sometimes a delay of a few minutes, and for some reason, this particular project, they needed that very specific turnaround time, be able to respond quickly to these things. Security, definitely a concern as well. One of the things, if you're in the medical space, HIPAA compliance is a big one that is kind of questionable on platforms like Zapier. So if you're doing anything with medical records, you're going to, really want to think through your solutions there and if Zapier is the right solution for you. And then again, limited customization, whereas you have unlimited customization with custom development. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. I am monitoring the chat and will respond as things come up. What is AI? So I think this has been, everyone's probably pretty aware of what AI is at this point. We've all been hearing about ChatGPT. Google has Gemini. There's a variety of other AI platforms out there to do all kinds of different things. But basically, it involves a simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. So some of the key components of AI are things like machine learning, doing natural language processing. Robotics, obviously, is another big piece of AI. We're not going to talk very much about robotics as kind of specialized use case, but nonetheless, when we think of AI, we need to think of everything, not just software, but even, hardware systems that can get automated. As far as applications in business, a variety of different things. We've got things like data analysis. We've heard and probably experienced we're talking with a AI chatbot, sometimes a good experience, sometimes not so good experience. There's a really cool story. Well, I don't know if it's a cool story, interesting story about, I believe it was it's a Canada Air, I believe is the airline where they had, I believe it was they had an AI chatbot that started offering a special refund policy to people because someone had tricked the chatbot into saying some things, and I think it even went to court, and the courts ruled that they had to honor that refund policy. So definitely some dangers there. You need some minefields you need to navigate around when you think about using AI for customer support. And then, of course, things like predictive maintenance, being able to know when you need to do things and using AI to predict what's coming down the pipe, looking for patterns and things like that. Problem is we're almost through with the slides, but some of the benefits of automation, things like increased efficiency, so being able to automate repetitive tasks and reduce any kind of manual errors, manual entry, that sort of thing. Definitely cost savings because you have automated processes. So you're not having to do uh, the monotonous work that you do every day, and instead you can reallocate your time to focus on higher value activities. As a business owner, I love that because if I can get rid of the mundane of my day and spend more time working on my business instead of in my business, that's always way more valuable for me. So as much as I can automate, I do. So I guess you could say we kind of eat our own dog food, so to speak, with automation. As far as scalability, being able to handle growing workloads without proportionally increasing in resources. So, a lot of times if you got to send out 10 reports today and next week you got to send out 20 reports, well, with automation, if you have that automated, it doesn't really matter whether it's 10 or 20, whereas if you were doing all by hand, that means double the work. So very basic example, but that's what we mean by scalability. And then finally, improved accuracy. Being able to be consistent and be precise in the way you execute your task. All right, we're going to go on to the next component of this presentation, which is to go through our playbook. So I'm going to quit sharing for just a second. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. But I'm going to pull up a 1 second. And again, this playbook that I'm going to be sharing, we will be providing it copy to those who sign up for our offer at the end. So this is basically what you'll be getting. And this is a work in progress for us, I should add. Constantly adding to this and finding new ways to leverage it. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you all can see my screen. This is the Automate My Business playbook. I'm not going to go, there's a lot of boilerplate in here, so I'm not going to go through all this. There's, some salesy stuff, sales boilerplate that we have at the beginning of this to talk about what we do and kind of position ourselves. And then we get into the actual playbook overview. So purpose of this playbook, designed to help businesses and employees who manage workflows, identify areas where automation can improve efficiency and reduce manual tasks. And so as we go through this, we're going to look at following steps. Hopefully, let me make this a little bit bigger. Hopefully everyone can see this okay. As far as the basic steps when we think about doing automation, so this is when we sit down and work with one of our customers, and we're going to talk to them about automation. The first thing we want to do is make sure we educate them on things like no code and AI. So some of the slides we went through already, that general understanding is important because if you understand what it does, then you can start to think about how you can apply the tasks, the different things you need to do, given that understanding. So have an understanding of what Zapier is. And it's okay, if you're on this webinar, you haven't used Zapier before, that's fine. We're going to walk through, you hear me talking a lot about Zapier because it's one of the coolest tools, one that we use all the time. Probably the quintessential, as far as I'm concerned, quintessential no-code tool that's out there, but there's obviously several others. But you need to have that general understanding because if you have that general understanding, you can start to apply these concepts to your processes and workflows. And so from there, we move into identifying automation opportunities. This is strictly like we're going to go through a questionnaire. And I don't know if I'm going to go through every single question, but I'll introduce you to it to kind of walk through that. It's a questionnaire we use with our clients to talk about automation opportunities and uncover their needs and start to hone in on things we can do to improve their performance and help them to scale. Once you go through that questionnaire, get into step 3, which is analyzing those responses, which is reviewing the questionnaire results and then prioritizing those tasks for automation. Doing things like, getting step 4, evaluating candidates for automation, assessing the feasibility and impact of automating prioritized tasks, doing cost-benefit analysis on those different tasks to figure out, which ones would give us the best bang for the buck, that sort of thing. And then coming up with an implementation plan where we start to develop and execute on automating some of those common tasks. And then finally, once that is done, we always need to have a continuous improvement plan. A lot of times we say start small and grow from there. So maybe you have a report that you need to send out every week. You'd like to automate parts of that report. Maybe you can automate 50, 60% of it. The report that takes you 2 or 3 hours to compile, maybe get it down to an hour of your time instead of 2 to 3 hours. And then from there, you can continue to automate that even more. And maybe at some point you get it to where it's a push button thing where it's only a 5 or 10 minute process for you. But kind of doing that step up to make sure that allows you to test along the way, improve things, and then realize that performance gain from that. Okay. So now I go back through this is kind of what we've already covered in the slides. Questions like, what is automation? What are the benefits of it? with some examples of automation. Mentioned Zapier and Airtable, Webflow. If this and that's a really cool tool. If anyone's ever done any kind of home automation using the name escapes me, the little micro boards that you can purchase, Raspberry Pis. A lot of people use if this and that with Raspberry Pis and some of the home automation tools out there. What kind of tasks are suitable for automation? So things like repetitive tasks, any kind of data entry and processing, scheduling, calendar management, communication management. So things like emails, notifications, generating reports, or maybe it's onboarding. It could be customer onboarding, it could be employee onboarding. You know, if you have a new hire onboarding process, those are great things to try to automate. So that kind of, you know, as we go through this playbook with our clients, we introduce them to, you know, these different tools, the concepts. We talk about what kind of tasks they can be thinking about in terms of automation, just kind of whet their palate, and then we get into the actual questionnaire. And so I'm going to kind of go through this quick because I think there's like 15 or 20 questions in here. You can see it's quite a bit, but I'll try to go through this real quick. So we want to look at things like the frequency of any kind of repetitive task. So what kind of task do you find yourself doing over and over again throughout your workday? How much time do you spend on email? You know, are you getting a lot of emails? How do you manage that? Because there's solutions within AI and no code to be able to handle your email management. What about calendar coordination, arranging meetings, managing calendars, coordinating schedules with others? What about transfer data between applications? You have one application where you enter stuff in and you need to also have that entered in another application. Do you have a lot of those kind of situations? You know, classic example might be have an inventory system that's outside of QuickBooks, but you also have QuickBooks managing things. And so you got to do double entry, things like that. Manual entry of data. Are there things that you're entering in every day into like spreadsheets that you could pull automatically? Report generation and data compilation. How frequently are you compiling information from various sources to create reports or summaries? What about data reentry? Kind of analogous to some of the things we've already discussed. Document presentation preparation. Are you creating a lot of documents or you know, creating a lot of revisions of documents, presentations, things like that? What about customer client onboarding? And I mentioned also employee onboarding is another piece, new hires. How often are you doing that sort of thing? And how painful is it? Is it something you can automate? Approval process. How often do you need to obtain approvals or signatures for different things like documents, projects, or transactions? What about managing inventory or task and project tracking? You know, are you doing things like updating project statuses and assigning tasks out to people? Needing to check in on if a task has been completed with maybe it's members of your team. Maybe you're the project manager and you're working with the team to understand, you know, progress, and you need that feedback loop, and you want to automate some of that process. That kind of goes into, again, communication with team members. You know, for reminders and collaboration, file management. Some of these, you know, this is kind of like if you've ever been through, well, hopefully you've been through an interrogation with, you know, with a detective, for example. But like a lot of times, if you've ever watched the crime shows, you know, they'll sit there and ask the same questions over and over again sometimes. And it's like they'll ask the question slightly different. And it's not meant to try to, I guess maybe in some cases it's meant to try to trap you, but it could also be meant to try to, as you look at things from different perspectives and circle back on questions, sometimes it allows, you know, more information to come in. And so some of these may feel a little bit repetitive, but we found that by going through this and re-asking the same questions sometimes multiple times or kind of different ways, it also to uncover more opportunities in terms of automation. And really, again, what we're looking for is how do we get the best bang for the buck out of the things that we automate? So again, going back to communication with team members, things like file management. How often do you organize certain archive files and documents? What about customer support? Do you have to respond to a lot of customer inquiries? Are you providing support through like a help desk or through Slack or through text message or whatever? What about expense tracking and reimbursement? How do you track expenses? Maybe it's travel expenses, whatever it might be, and handling the reimbursement on that. What about website content updates? How often are you updating your website? Social media management. How often are you posting or scheduling or managing content that you're pushing out to these different social media platforms? Event planning and coordination. How often are you organizing, planning, or coordinating events, sending out invitations, tracking reservations, that sort of thing? And then finally, sales and marketing campaigns. How often do you set up and monitor and analyze sales and marketing campaigns? So again, this would be a questionnaire we go through with our customers, and you know, we take some artistic liberty with this to go through this in a lot of detail with customers. Sometimes, you know, it could take, I mean, you could turn that 20 questions into a 2-hour conversation easily. And so one of our challenges is to try to, hone in on some immediate wins uh, when when we're working with our clients. Um, then we get down into some of the other things, like when it comes time to decide on which process is targeted. So hopefully we go through this questionnaire up above. We get a lot of information. Typically record those conversations, maybe use some sort of AI tool to annotate the conversation as well, so we make sure we capture everything. Then we get into analyzing all of that data and trying to figure out, okay, where do we start? So a lot of times what we like to do is come up with an overall plan for process and workflow automation, but then hone in on like a few big wins that we can have right away, something that will make, have some immediate value. And so the way we do that is by evaluating each of these tasks that we identify that could be automated. So, the first thing is, how complex is it? Because if it's something that would really, if it's not a big gain in terms of efficiency, but it's gonna be really hard to automate, then it's probably not a good candidate. Whereas if it's a very simple thing to automate and it's taking a lot of time, someone's doing a lot of work manually, then those are the kind of things we want to hone in on. So we're going to look at the complexity. We're going to look at the frequency, how often this task is performed, the volume, and frequency and volume are two different things, right? So how many times is it repeated, and then how often is it repeated? If it's repeated a lot, or if the volume is it's a huge task, but it's only once a year, then we need to decide if that's worth automating or not. Impact of it. What is the impact of automating this task? And sometimes that impact isn't just cost savings, right? It's quality. It's knowing that you're doing things in a high quality way, eliminating manual entry, manual error, that sort of thing. Those can be, come into play in terms of impact. And same with cost. You think about the cost to build that automation, and then there's the cost of not building that automation, the cost of mistakes. And so these are things we do when we start evaluating that. And then we go through typically a cost benefit analysis where we're going to go and calculate the potential time savings. We have different spreadsheets and workbooks and so forth we go through when we're looking at different tasks to try to, quantify which task we should go and focus on. But we'll do that CBA, that cost benefit analysis, to look at the potential time savings and assess the financial benefits, and then, of course, not just consider how much it's going to cost to build out that process, but also what it's going to look like with the ongoing maintenance costs. And using things like decision matrices is decision matrices, I guess is the proper way to pronounce that, to go and score all of that criteria and then prioritize the task with the higher scores. Then we get into the implementation, right? And this is where we're going to go and start thinking about which tools we're going to use, comparing different platforms, think about what tools we're wanting to integrate, what processes we're wanting to integrate. That's going to help drive what type of tools we're going to use. And then getting into the actual step-by-step of the implementation. So we're going to define the process and workflow. We need to make sure we understand the process before we're going to automate it. If we don't understand the process, it's really difficult to automate. So this is if we have different approaches with this in terms of how we work with our customers. So we may do a done with you type of approach where we're there to help consult and help out when you get stuck, but basically you're doing it yourself. Or it could also be a done for you approach where we're actually building out everything. So obviously, if we're doing a done for you, we really need to understand that process and workflow. And so that's important to make sure we understand what it is you're doing so that we can start to think about how to automate it. And then mapping that out manually. We want to, besides understanding it, we need to make sure we map it out and completely understand what's going on so we can begin to build out that automation and then test it. And then, of course, deploy and, maintain that automation once it's done. Best practices, this is obviously important to pay attention to. There are definitely some best practices you need to make sure you follow, such as starting with small manageable tasks. I mentioned that earlier. Like if you have a complex process, maybe you don't automate the whole process, the whole workflow all at once. Maybe you automate a portion of it, or maybe, like I'm going to show you an example of a process that we automated, which is basically, employing this kind of strategy where we're going to have a PDF file needs to get automatically emailed to certain customers based on the file name. I'm going to walk through that Zapier workflow with you here in a second as part of a demo. When I go through that, there's obviously some things we could do to improve that. And those are things we're currently working on improving, but we started small because we wanted to get something out that would immediately start making an impact for us, and we can go and do some of the other automation. And a lot of times that has to do with limitations. We're using a tool like Zapier. There may be limitations in what it's able to do out of the box, and so there may be some custom code we have to build on top of that. So we save the custom code till later, and we do the immediate stuff, first. definitely want to think about data security and compliance. Again, if you're in the medical industry and you have HIPAA concerns, you probably don't want to be managing patient records through Zapier. That may be subject to change. There are some no-code solutions out there that are HIPAA compliant, but obviously a lot of things going on in the cloud, interoperability between tools. You want to be really concerned about data security. Um, it's always obviously good anytime you're working within an organization, as I'm sure all of you know, to get stakeholders and get their buy-in on anything that you're doing. Um, working against the grain with a lot of resistance is usually a very difficult challenge. I've been there, done that before, not fun. If you can get people bought in, that's always a good thing. And so sometimes it might mean not just getting people bought in, but looking for the early adopters within your organization. So not just going in and saying we're going to start with, everyone's gonna adopt AI and automation come hell or high water. Maybe it's finding the people who are really excited about this and letting them be able to, show the transformation of their processes, workflow, and their job by automating some of their tasks, and then others will buy in. Obviously, there's a lot at stake right now when we think about AI and no code, and there's some obviously difficult aspects of this, such as, job security and some of the things that we do now. And so, we always want to be ethical and cognizant of what it is we're building and realize that, we're also dealing with people and emotions and all that sort of thing. So sometimes that comes up when you think about stakeholders and getting buy-in. Uh, Certainly providing training and support for employees. I think it's important to empower employees. We want to look at AI and no code as a tool to help them do better with their jobs and make themselves more scalable. Again, for me as a business owner, I'm always thinking about how can I get more time out of my day. And if I get rid of the monotonous tasks, I can spend more time on my best business instead of working in my business. And so those kind of things are obviously important. And if we can get others bought in on that same concept, then great. And then again, continuous improvement, continuously monitoring and optimizing automated processes. And that continuous improvement looks like this. Basically, you're going to be regularly reviewing and auditing those automated processes, collecting feedback to incorporate it into your strategy. So basically into your automation, as you build out automations, you're going to get feedback and maybe find ways to improve it. Other things you can do, maybe it's even your automation you built can be used by other members of your organization within other departments. And so thinking about how you can build automations out in more of a general purpose mode where they can be reused. Coming from the semiconductor world where we did a lot with intellectual property, we never started a new design from scratch from a blank sheet of paper, right? We always had some IP we were pulling in from other places. And so that was always a big challenge within the semiconductor industry. I know within the company I worked for, we had different business units, and it was not uncommon to have a business unit go out and build something from scratch, only to find out that another business unit already had something similar they could have started with. That kind of stuff really stinks. And so if you can build things in a way, build some of these processes, workflows, these recipes in a way that they can be leveraged by other departments, that's always a good thing as well. And then, of course, staying updated with the latest trends and technologies because this is changing constantly. We watch the news and see all the latest with AI. There's a ton going on. So you always want to make sure you're staying up to date with that and being aware of what's going on. That's pretty much it. And I think the last bit is just our boilerplate again, marketing stuff. But again, we're going to have an offer here at the end. If you'd like to get a copy of this, I will send this over to you. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Are there any questions? See a question from Beth. How should we train our team on AI and no code? Yeah, that's a good question. So when it comes to training, I think there's a ton of resources. We're actually in the process of building out a library of resources ourselves, and we are also setting up something new for our company, Caffeine Interactive, a mastermind community for people to join, which will have resources around AI and no code and training sessions and that sort of thing. There's definitely tons of information out there on YouTube as well. But I think the best way to get started is start playing with the tools. If we're going to walk through Zapier here in a second, you get to see how Zapier works. That's a great place to start. That's probably the number one place I would recommend people starting when you start thinking about no code and AI as well. ChatGPT. We'll talk about how ChatGPT plays into this. But a lot of times, if you're trying to figure out how to automate processes, just get into ChatGPT and start a prompt with ChatGPT and explain, some of the things that you're looking to do. It's a good question though. I think that's definitely important to think about how to handle getting your team on board. But I would say just getting your hands wet, your hands dirty, hands wet or hands dirty, whatever the thing is. Get started there, and that's a good place to get going. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. So next on the agenda was that was the playbook demo. Okay, now we're gonna get into an automation demo. Okay, so let's go over here. So I mentioned, so I was just talking about ChatGPT. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through a process that we recently automated. This process is something that we do once a month. So I'm going to get some water. This is the process we go through once a month, where basically we have a bunch of customers who have websites and apps that we maintain and support. And so we work with those customers to help them out. And this, actually, I see another question here. Let me answer that real quick. Let's see. Thank you for sharing. How do you approach scaling these great tips between startups and SMBs versus departments and enterprise deployments? Yeah, that's a good question. I think even when you think about larger deployments, like at the enterprise level, again, I always tend to gravitate more towards uh, what I'm trying to say, uh, early adopters, right? So the people who are excited about it. So I did this when I was working in the semiconductor industry with different. So the group I was in when I was in the semiconductor was a design automation team that worked with all the different business units. And so we had some business units that were more aggressive about uh, emerging trends and technologies than others, and some design managers that were more on board with that than others. So I think a lot of times it's finding a way to get entrenched within the organization and finding some early adopters and being able to show some wins, being able to prove that within management, and then you can start to gravitate out from there uh, to other business units and organizations, other units within the organization. Um, that's what I would recommend. So I don't think it necessarily looks a lot different when you think about small to medium businesses versus enterprise. Because even at the enterprise level, I tend to think about starting small and finding, one business unit or one team within that organization to work with. That doesn't mean you can't go faster than that. A lot of times you're wanting to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. So slowing down too much can sometimes be a little bit difficult. Uh, you want to keep going at an aggressive rate. And so, um, you know, one way that we've seen this done is by just the introduction to AI and no code and getting people thinking about how to change the way they think about the problems that they solve. So here's another good example. Think about when the internet came around. For those of you that are, I don't know everyone's age on this call, but I grew up kind of in the growth of the internet was in high school back in the 90s. That was when the internet first started coming into play, and everyone's kind of talking about we don't really know what the internet's going to do. It's kind of cool, it's kind of interesting, but what's going to happen from it? And very quickly, over the course of a few years, everyone started adopting the internet. Quickly went from I need to find a plumber, I'm going to pull out the yellow pages to I'm going to go search online, right? And I think that AI in particular is very much similar to that because now AI is a clear path to go to solve problems. If you're dealing with something, like even yesterday, I was looking at something. I've got a problem with an AC in my RV. It's not working, and so I was using ChatGPT to try to help diagnose it. It's a new paradigm. Like I didn't do that 6 months ago. That's something new. And so just getting people within the organization thinking like that, thinking about using AI in order to solve problems is already a win because it starts to get them into that space so that they're more receptive as you start thinking about automation. Would definitely be happy to chat with you about this more offline, Matt, if you'd like. If you have other questions about that, because it is a challenge, but I think it's a challenge that we love to address, and we've worked with some enterprises, so would love to chat with you more. Great question though. And yes, feel free to, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm gonna go ahead and go through this demo. If you have questions, if they pertain to the demo, I may try to answer them live. I may hold off on any other questions until the end. We've got about 20 minutes left, so I'm gonna kind of go through this quickly, which I think is okay. It shouldn't take too long. But basically what I have is this is a process that we automated here recently. And so this process involves, I wanted to do something really simple. I was going to go into like a really detailed automation, just something to kind of introduce Zapier and what's going on. So this process that we had was, and you can read the prompt here that I've typed into ChatGPT. Hopefully you can read the text okay on the screen share. But basically a PDF that I'm sending out to customers, and I would like to automate this process using Zapier. So this is the prompt that I typed into ChatGPT, or I'm about to type in. We're gonna have ChatGPT come back and tell us how we can do this. And so this is part of what I was talking about when I was answering the question just now about getting into ChatGPT and just leveraging these AI tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, Gemini being the Google product, using that to help understand how to do certain things. And so I'm telling ChatGPT I've got this process of sending out PDF reports to customers, and what I want to do is when the report is ready, I want to be able to upload it into Google Drive, into a particular folder. Then I want Zapier to be able to detect if that file has been uploaded. And then based on the file name, it's going to do a lookup within a Google Sheet to figure out who it needs to email that file to. And then it'll send that PDF as a link to the individual we want to send it to using a tool called Mailgun, which is an outbound transactional email service. And so if I type this into Zapier and let's say, can you provide me step-by-step instructions on how to do this in Zapier? So if I hit enter, and there's an error generating response. AI is not perfect. I was having some issues with it yesterday. You can see here it comes back, and I'm sure most of you probably play with ChatGPT, but maybe not doing anything with no code and creating zaps and so forth. We can see it kind of comes in here and tells you exactly what to do. And this is really cool. We're going to go into Zapier in just a second and kind of follow along with what it has explained here. If you come in here, just look, I mean, it's coming in and it's telling us, okay, we need to have, an account set up in Zapier. We need Google Drive, Google Sheets, and Mailgun. I've got all those set up, or I got them configured within Zapier. So I'm already ready to go with this. And then it's going to walk through and tell me, okay, here's what I need to do in terms of the different steps. I need to set Google Drive. It's going to tell me, what to do in Google Drive. I need to create a lookup table in Google Sheets. I've already got that set up. I'll show you how I've set that up as we go through the Zap. In Zapier, the customizations you build are called zaps. So if you hear something referred to as a zap, that is basically a recipe for an automation. So we're going to go into Zapier, log in, we're going to make a zap, we're going to set up a trigger. This trigger is going to be, based around a file showing up in Google Drive, new file in a folder, and then there's ability to test that, and then have an action to look up. And I probably shouldn't read through the instructions. We're going to go through this anyways. We're basically going through these different steps to eventually, have the zap done, test it, and once it's done, we publish the zap, it's ready to go. Now it's live. Anything we do as far as uploading files into that folder are going to get processed by Zapier. So this is great because it gives you kind of step-by-step instructions. Now I will warn you that it's not perfect. When I was setting up this process, I was trying to get a PDF exported out of Google Drive. Zapier was telling me you can export a PDF from Google Drive using Zapier, that there's an action for exporting a PDF. There is actually not an action in Google for exporting a PDF in Google Drive within Zapier. You can export a PDF from Google Drive, obviously. That's an option within Google Drive, within Google Docs. But the actual integration that exists in Zapier does not support that feature. So you have to do something custom. So it will give you some bad information from time to time. And so just be aware of that. If it tells you to do something, you may have to follow up with additional prompts to say, hey, I tried this and I can't find this option. How do I do this? And it will walk you through it. Let's actually go over into the actual Zap, though, that I built. Actually, before we do that, let me go back. When you get into Zapier, this is what Zapier looks like. Basically have, oops, I really want to go there. I come in here to Zaps because it gets back to I've got different folders in here that I can leverage. We're going to go into this maintenance folder. But I can go in here and I can create a Zap. And here's something that's kind of cool. You saw how I typed in this prompt into ChatGPT and it gave me instructions. Well, I can actually do the same thing here. I'll just cut and paste this. Because even Zapier uses AI. So I can come in here and let's see what it does. I haven't tested this. Let's see, it uses Microsoft's AI engine, Copilot. So Copilot's thinking. It should come back in just a second with some information. So you can see here, it basically has all the different steps, and I can come in here and I can add all these steps to the Zap. Now it's already started to build my Zap for me. It's okay if you don't understand what all this is doing. This is, if you haven't played with Zapier before, this may be a little bit intimidating at first, but basically it's the list of steps that the Zap is going to go through in order to process this functionality that I described to Zapier. So it's going to look for a new file. It's going to filter. So it's basically going to continue if the file meets certain conditions. And then it's going to, I don't know, look, there's spreadsheet lookup and then send the emails. This is saying send it through Keep, but a specified mailgun. So you can see it's not perfect. I don't know why it chose Keep when I said mailgun over here. But let me exit out of this because I already have this app built and I'm not going to try to make that work. Instead, we're going to go through one that I've already built for the demo called Email Site Health Reports. So you can see there's a very simple 4-step process. Starts with a new file showing up in a Google Drive folder. And then we have a text formatting, which I'll explain what that's doing here in just a second. And it's going to use a lookup table in Google Sheets to figure out, based on that file that's uploaded into Google Drive, who that file needs to be emailed to, and then it's going to send that email out through Mailgun. So let's just drop right into the first step here, which is the new file in Google Drive. Hit edit draft. Okay. So you can see here, basically, when you set up a step, so typically when you set up a step, you're going to click like a plus here, and it's going to ask you which tool you want to integrate with. So if I want to do something, say, with Microsoft Excel, I can select that. And it's going to come in and say, okay, well, what event? I can choose different events that could be like conditions that I want to happen in order for this step to execute. So this is kind of how those apps are organized. You have different steps. Basically, the step is usually built around a particular tool. I'm going to go and delete this because we don't actually want to use Microsoft Excel on this because we're using Google Drive, but just as an example of how you add steps. But these are the steps that I have. So this first step is going to be for checking for a new file in a Google Drive folder. So you can see I've connected my Google Drive account to Zapier. The event I'm using is called new file and folder. There's other events I could say if a file is updated, want it to trigger on anytime a file is updated in this folder. If there's a new file inside of any folder, or if there's a new folder code, maybe I create a new folder. Maybe it's a new hire automation, and I'm going to create a folder for every new hire. And so when that new folder gets created for the new hire, it's going to kick off some automation. In this case, I'm looking for a new file in a folder. That's the step that I selected. Then you set up your account. So this is kind of like a wizard. You go left to right here on the tab. So you start with the app, you set up your account, then you set up the trigger event. So what I'm doing is I'm looking in my Google Drive and I'm looking at a folder called _test. That's where it's going to check for any new files. And then the test portion is basically, this is a chance to test that. So if I put a file in that Google Drive directory, I can test it and it'll go through and check that it's working and check that it found a file and allow me to see a bunch of metadata around that file. Next from there, we're going into a step. This one may be a little bit out of scope for this this webinar, but basically, I'm gonna get into a little bit of codey stuff here with regular expressions. But basically, I have a file. Let me show you. Here's my folder that has everything in it. And I'm going to do something real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and execute this app so you can see what it does, because I think it'll make more sense if I go ahead and execute it, then I can go back and explain. So I'm basically uploading a file. There's this monthly site health report. And what I need to do is when I upload this file, I've got monthly site health reports for a variety of clients. And so this particular client, the keyword is CCW, that stands for actually Caffeine Consulting. Used to be, before we rebranded as Caffeine Interactive, we used to be Caffeine Consulting. So it's a CCW Caffeine Consulting website. So that's the identifier that tells me where I'm supposed to send this report. So I uploaded this report. This report is done. I want to send out to the client being myself or our team, so they can look at this site health report. So I'm going to upload this file into Google Drive, and then I have an email lookup spreadsheet, which is basically like this, where I have the identifier CCW. So that's the identifier from this file name. Based on the identifier, I want to email this particular alias with this report. So when this file exists that has CCW in the file name, it's going to send an email to customer-CCW with that report attached. That's all we're trying to do. So going back to Zapier, what we're doing here is I need to take that file name, which is, a long file name, right? 2024-06 monthly site health report underscore ccw.pdf. I need to trim out that CCW. So that's where I use this regular expression. By the way, obviously, if you're not a developer, you look at this and say, wow, I'm not going to come up with that on my own. Well, guess what? ChatGPT can do that for you. I don't know if it put it in this particular. Yeah, I did not put it in here. I think it would be like this step. I could go and add another prompt and say, you could actually tell it, here's the file name. I want to match up this segment of the file name with uh, the lookup table. How can I do that? And it would walk you through the instructions on how, like, I basically got this pattern from ChatGPT. Even though I'm a developer, I just said, regular expressions, it's kind of crazy. Like, just tell me how to do it. And it did. Don't worry about that if you don't understand what's going on there. Basically, looking for a new file in Google Drive. We're gonna do some manipulation on the file name in order to figure out who it needs to get sent to. From that, we're going to look up in the spreadsheet, which I just showed you, to figure out if that file matches a customer, and if so, it's going to send out that email through Mailgun. And so, I'll just step through this real quick. So basically, I'm looking in this particular spreadsheet, this test health reports email lookup spreadsheet. The worksheet on that spreadsheet is called ID to email, and I tell it which column I want to look at. And then it's going to come back and give me an output, which is the identifier. In this case, it was test, but the example I'm going to be using, it's going to be CCW. And then, of course, send out the email. So Mailgun basically said, we're going to use Mailgun. We set the account. We set up the different actions in order to handle this. And then, of course, going in and able to test it. So the nice thing about when you're building a Zap is as you walk through these different steps, you can test each step and see how it's working. And it's like when I go and identify the new file in Google Drive, I can test it and it'll find that file. And then I can go on the next step and say, well, based on that test data that we did in step one, use that for this text formatter option, use this spreadsheet, use this, for sending out the email. And as you see here on the email, I can put for the to email address, I can come in here and I can select fields that maybe showed up in the other steps. Again, this I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I'll probably be doing a more specific presentation on Zapier. So I don't want to get too much into the details on how Zapier works. Really, the idea here is just to kind of grasp the concept of like, these are the kind of things you can do within Zapier. Okay, so I've gone ahead and uploaded that site health report. Let's see, let me go back. Let me see if that came through. I was editing the file, so I'm hoping I didn't break anything. Here we go. Did in fact show up. I'm gonna share this with you so you can see. So as you saw earlier, I uploaded that report into that folder. And now what you'll see is that, if we can see my screen, this is the email that came through. So this came from Mailgun using that Zap, where basically here's the report, and I can click here to download the report and access it. So makes life a lot easier than having to type out this email to 100 different people. Just upload the file into a folder and it takes care of it. As long as I have the lookup table set up, which is this thing here, I could list out all of our clients and the different identifiers that we have, and upload files and automatically process it and send those emails out to people. So that's a very basic Zap again, but kind of the concept that we're going for here. In terms of how to automate things. And so you can build on top of this and do all kinds of crazy things and even write custom code. You can have steps in here that are using no code. And then if you need to write a custom widget, you could do that. Custom piece of code, you could do that here. Okay, great. Any questions on that? Let me go back to the presentation because I think we're about done. We've got a little time for Q&A. Let me stop sharing for a second. Feel free to type any questions you may have. But I'm going to get back and share real quick the last bit on here. Okay, so we went through the automation demo. So as far as next steps, we are going to have a short Q&A session here at the end. But as far as next steps, as I mentioned, I think in a lot of the stuff we sent out ahead of time, the recording of the webinar will be shared when this webinar ends. You feel free to share it with others. We love having this disseminated to your friends and colleagues and whoever else. And of course, a special offer. So here's a special offer. Talking about a lot of the stuff that was going on here today. As I mentioned, the Automate My Business Playbook is something we are going to share with the audience. So if you're interested uh, in the special offer, we can provide you a copy of that Automate My Business Playbook, as well as we're offering a 1 hour automation consultation. No, we're not going to, I mean, we're saying an hour, give or take a little. We're somewhat flexible on that, but basically an opportunity to sit down with you and talk about your business processes and maybe even go through one automation, something that can make your life easier, just to walk through it with you. Kind of done with you approach to this, where we sit down and go through that automation, help you build it out, so you can realize the benefits of that and kind of see how it all works. Uh, the stuff we do with our clients all the time, uh, basically offering this for $49. Why are we charging for this? We've done these for free in the past. And honestly, we're not making a lot of money. $49 is not, we don't have enough people attending this webinar, though we have a good turnout. We're not going to make a lot of money off this offer. We're not selling thousands of these. So there's not a lot of money to be made on this. Reason why we do charge for it, though, is because I think it makes a better experience, but better transaction between us and whoever is going through this trial offer with us. We like people to be able to leverage, some of these things from us. And so by charging something, it makes you, the hope is that you don't feel like you're getting something for free. Typically, you get what you pay for. You're actually paying us, so you hold us to a certain level of expectation, and we want you to hold us to that level of expectation. So we do charge a minimal fee of $49 just to recoup some cost off of this. But basically, we'll provide that 1 hour of consultation. We'll go through a typical Zapier flow, just like what we set up here just now for you, or just demoed. We can set something up like that. And also, of course, you get the copy of that Automate My Business Playbook. And also we provide consulting services related to business automation processes. And so, we'd love to work with you and your organization, anyone you work with, to help with some of these things. All right. Now onto the Q&A session. And that should be it. Here's, I'll leave it on the screen, actually. I'll leave this shared. This is how you get in touch with us. Again, in order to get access to that special offer, just send an email to Dustin at Caffeine Interactive with the subject Automate My Business Playbook, and we'll be happy to send you over. We don't have the form set up yet to take to handle the charge on the special offer. So if you just email me, I'll send you out that link when that's available. Okay. Going to questions. Let's see. We have a couple questions here that I was going to wait on. So is it Stefan? Stefan. We have some proprietary tools that probably aren't integrated with Zapier. Can we still use Zapier, or how does that work? Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely. One of the cool things about Zapier is you can actually incorporate custom code. And in fact, when I was going through this step, the process I was showing with exporting with the PDF and automatically emailing it to people, one of the things I wanted to do is I tried setting up that Zap to not just allow me to upload a PDF into a folder and send it out, but actually that PDF originates as a Google Doc. And so I was trying to see if I could export out from Google Drive the PDF and then have it send that PDF as an attachment. I was having issues with that because Zapier doesn't support the export to PDF feature that's available in Google Docs. Google Docs obviously has the ability to export a PDF. It's just that Zapier doesn't support it. So as a workaround, you can create what's called a Google App script, which is basically a small little snippet of code that you stick into Google Docs, and it'll allow you to export the PDF when you need to. And basically Zapier can call that. And that's a way around Zapier not supporting the actual export to PDF feature within Google Drive. Now, the cool thing about that is you can use ChatGPT, and it'll actually give you the snippet of code. You just cut and paste it into Google Docs, and it all works. And so that's an example of a tool that does integrate. Google Docs obviously does integrate with Zapier, but not all the features and functionality of Google Docs are available within Zapier. So we had a workaround, which is using AI in order to accommodate a special case, and a special case that Zapier didn't support. And obviously, you can hire a developer to build out some of those things too. So it's not uncommon to have a process that's automated where you're using no code for most of the process, but there's segments in there that are custom code. But still think about that. In the good old days, right, as I like to refer to them, you would have had to build all that from scratch. It'd been a complete custom build out. Now you're building out maybe 80, 90% of it through no code, and you only really automating the last, or building out custom pieces of the last 10 or 20% of that. We prefer to try to use no code as much as possible because I think it not only is it more cost effective, but the support and maintenance of that is much better in the long run. But occasionally we do have to build out things custom. But that's why we're doing what we do. We're custom software developers. That's our trade. We've adapted to no code and AI because that's the future, and allows us to spend our time focused on the more pressing tasks, the more difficult tasks, and allow and not focus on the mundane tasks like reading a spreadsheet. We can just throw that over to Zapier and let it help. So anyways, that's the answer to the question. I think if you're using any proprietary tools, you can still use Zapier. It just might mean you need to build like a custom interface for that tool, or find some other kind of workaround. But usually there is a workaround. That should not necessarily be a deterrent to not use Zapier and to not use automation. Good question. Another question from Manesh. How do I know if the problem, I think this may be the last question because we're out of time. How do I know if the problem I want to solve can be done with no code? When do I need a custom solution? Well, I think I kind of answered that already, but if the tool you're integrating with doesn't exist within Zapier or within, isn't supported by whatever no code solution you're using, then obviously you're probably gonna have to go off and build something custom. But a lot of times you can leverage things like AI and ChatGPT to help with any kind of custom code. Again, Zapier supports custom code out of the box. So you can, in fact, use custom code within a Zapier recipe. So you could have something where like you get a file from Google Drive and then maybe you need to manipulate that file with a quick little Google app script, or maybe it's JavaScript to go process it. And you can ask ChatGPT for the recipe on that, the snippet of code that you need. So yeah, definitely when it comes to custom solutions, we like to think of them. It's not really an either or. There's definitely cases where you have a Zap that needs some custom solution, some custom component to it. But it's usually not, well, if one piece of this can't be automated, the whole thing is dead in the water. We have to build something from scratch. No, we can usually still do a lot of it through no code and then pull in custom code where it's needed for some specific need that isn't supported within Zapier. So I hope that answers your question. Good question, Manesh. All right, well, I think we're out of time. I've got my info on here of how you can reach out to me. Just email me at info@caffeineinteractive.com. You also go to our website, caffeineinteractive.com. Again, for the special offer, if you just send an email to me, the subject, automate my business playbook, we'll get back to you as soon as possible on that, and send you over a link to get access to those assets. But I think it's a really great offer, especially if you're looking to get started and just want someone there to help you. We can do that kind of work with you. But that's it. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate everyone being here and your attention. And I will be sending out a copy of this webinar here in the next hour or two, hopefully. So look for that in your inbox. Feel free to share. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us. Love to help, and love chatting about this stuff. So just let me know how I can help you.